All right, you're good to go.
Welcome everyone to our January 25th, 2021 Board of Legislators meeting. And if we could at this time have Legislator Deb Root recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Legislator Root.
Okay, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Legislator David Decker, if you would give the invocation today.
Would you pray with me? Father God, we ask that you would be with our troops, first responders, and law enforcement today and every day that strive to keep us safe both here and abroad. I ask, Lord, that you also be with my colleagues and I and other public officials that try to, doing the people's business, that our discussions would be productive and fruitful. I also want, Lord, to pray for those that are still battling COVID-19, be with the victims, those that have become ill, and the families of those that are battling the disease. We ask these things in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Legislator Decker, for the invitation, and Legislator Root for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Roll call.
Mr. Barnes.
Present.
Mrs. Burdick.
Here.
Mr. Crandall.
Here.
Mr. Curran.
Here.
Mr. Decker.
Here.
Mr. Dibble. Mr. Fanton.
Here.
Mr. Graves.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Havey.
Here.
Mr. Healy.
Here.
Mrs. Hopkins. Mr. Ricky.
Sorry, here. Was muted, sorry.
That's okay.
Hopkins is here.
Mr. Ricky.
Here.
Mrs. Root.
Here,
Mr. Stockin.
Here.
And Mr. Dibble. Mr. Dibble is here. I believe he's having a little connection problem. You were provided a copy of the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of January 6th. At this time, we need a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion made by Mr. Fanton, seconded by
Harris.
Mr. Harris. Discussion. All in favor of their approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried and the minutes are approved.
You're provided a copy of the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of January 11th, and we need a motion to approve those minutes.
Stockin motion. Decker.
Moved by Legislator Stockin, seconded by Legislator Decker. Discussion. All in favor of their approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried and those minutes are approved.
And you were provided a copy of the board meeting minutes of January 11th, and we need a motion to approve those minutes.
Havey will move.
Barnes still second.
Moved by Legislator Havey, seconded by
Barnes.
Legislator Barnes. Discussion. All in favor of their approval, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion is carried and those minutes are approved.
You're provided a copy of the February calendar. Are there going to be any changes? Okay. Pursuant to Article 11 of the New York State Real Property Tax Law, County Treasurer Terry Ross filed a certificate of reinstatement of delinquent tax lien for property in the town of Friendship in my office on January 12th.
Resolutions.
Resolution intro number 2421. Amending resolution number 28520 to include the title of jail physician. This resolution is being offered by the Ways and Means Committee and has committee approval.
Motion Stockton.
Second, Fanton.
Motion is made by legislator Stockton, seconded by legislator Fanton. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Curran?
Yes.
I'm sorry, actually, I was supposed to start with Chairman Crandall. Chairman Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Decker?
yes,
Mr. Dibble? Mr. Fanton?
Here, yes.
Mr. Graves?
Yeah.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Havey?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ricky?
Yes.
Mrs. Root?
yes,
Mr. Stockin?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Burdick?
Yes.
14 ayes, 1 absent.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 2521. Reappointment of 2 members to the Allegheny County Community Services Board. This resolution is being offered by the Human Services Committee and has committee approval.
Hopkins move.
Burdick will second.
Motion is made by legislator Hopkins and seconded by legislator Burdick. Discussion. We will voice vote this resolution. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 2621, reappointment of 2 legislative members to the Allegheny County Soil and Water Conservation District Board. This resolution is being offered by the Resource Management Committee and has committee approval.
moved by legislator Decker,
Second by legislator Graves.
Motion is made by legislator Decker, seconded by legislator Graves. Discussion. We will voice this resolution as well. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 2721, appointment of annual ex officio members to the Allegheny County Planning Board. This resolution is being offered by the Planning and Economic Development Committee and has committee approval.
Root will make that motion.
Rick,
Havey will second.
Motion made by legislator Root, seconded by legislator Ricky. Discussion. This will be voice voted as well. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 2821, establishing capital project account for bridge number 2203 on New Hudson Road in the town of New Hudson. Transfer of funds for such capital account. This resolution is being offered by the Public Works and Ways and Means Committees and has both committees' approval.
Fanton will move. Second by Ricky.
Motion is made by legislator Fanton, seconded by legislator Ricky. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Decker,
yes,
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havey,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
Yes,
Mr. Stockin,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Burdick.
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 2921. A resolution in relation to the construction of Town Bridge number 2203, New Hudson Road in Town of New Hudson. This resolution is being offered by the Public Works and Ways and Means Committees and has both committees' approval.
Stanton will move. Ricky will second.
Motion is made by legislator Fanton and seconded by legislator Ricky. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
yes,
Mr. Decker,
yes,
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havey,
yes,
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
yes,
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stocking,
yes,
Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Burdick.
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 3021. Establishing capital project account for county culvert number 5C01, project on County Road 5C in the town of Genesee. Transfer of funds for such capital account. This resolution is being offered by the Public Works and Ways and Means Committees and has both committees' approval.
Stanton will move. Second by Ricky.
Motion is made by legislator Fanton and seconded by legislator Ricky. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
yes,
Mr. Decker,
yes,
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yeah.
Mr. Havey,
yes,
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
yes,
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stocking,
yes,
Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
and Mrs. Burdick.
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 3121, establishing capital project account for county culvert number 1646 project on County Road 16 in the town of West Almond. Transfer of funds for such capital account. This resolution is being offered by the Public Works and Ways and Means Committees and has both committees' approval.
Stanton will move. Second, Ricky.
Motion is made by legislator Fanton, seconded by legislator Ricky. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
yes,
Mr. Decker,
yes,
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris, Mr. Harris, Mr. Havey,
yes,
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
yes,
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stocking,
yes,
Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Burdick,
Yes.
and Mr. Harris.
Yes, thank you.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 3221. Acceptance of additional federal aid for the Department of Social Services CARES Act Supplemental Title 4B allocation. This resolution is being offered by the Human Services Committee and has committee approval.
moved by Hopkins,
Seconded by Burdick.
Motion is made by legislator Hopkins and seconded by legislator Burdick. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Decker,
Yes.
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Davy,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
yes,
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stocking,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
aye,
and Mrs. Burdick.
yes,
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution info number 3321. Acceptance and appropriation of additional aid from the National Children's Alliance for the Child Advocacy Center. Training awards on technology, facilitated child sexual exploitation, child pornography grant, approval of cooperative agreement with the National Children's Alliance. This resolution is being offered by the Ways and Means Committee and has committee approval.
Stockton move.
Fanton will second.
Motion is made by legislator Stocking, seconded by legislator Fanton. Discussion?
I think we do want to add Human Services as a sponsor.
I would think so.
Let's, a motion to amend that and add Human Services as a co-sponsor of this.
Hopkins will move that addition.
Second.
seconded by Burdick.
Motion made by legislator Hopkins, seconded by legislator Burdick. Somebody else was in between, but I couldn't catch it. But to add Human Services Committee as a co-sponsor of this resolution. All in favor of this amendment, say aye.
aye,
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for pointing that out. And on the original resolution, original motion as amended, discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if, I can't speak to this very well myself, but perhaps somebody else, either the administrator or Mrs. Hopkins could speak to it and give it a better explanation to the public of what this says. It's all very positive and all revenue coming in. But
We
perhaps
also have Commissioner Kays is with us, I believe, if she wants to give us a highlight.
On the floor first.
If not, County Administrator or Legislator Hopkins.
I
believe
I
this is
believe-
programming through the Child Advocacy Center, and I do wish that Ms. Case could get on. She probably would be the best to.
She's on.
Okay.
She's on.
She's unmuted.
Commissioner
I had to
Kays,
step
are
out of the
you with
room
us
for a
now?
second. Could you tell me what you're inquiring about? I apologize.
We are on resolution number 33 in our packet, and this is to for the acceptance and appropriation of additional aid from National Children's Alliance for the Child Advocacy Center, and specifically as it relates to child sexual exploitation and child pornography grant. And there was a question or comment that it would be nice if you could expand on it just a little bit beyond what's in this resolution in our 4 points here.
Sure. There are two contracts for the National Children's Alliance that are before you today, I believe. One is it's a training in the Celebrate system, which is a system that can take a deep look at technology of any kind of offender, alleged offender, whether it be their computer or a phone or any type of technology that they may have. To do that, we have to be able to train law enforcement The CAC already owns the system itself. And we would like to train some law enforcement officials to be able to utilize that should they be looking for any kind of sex trafficking type photos, or that might be in a computer or something to that effect. So that is one of the contracts, and we would look to train one of our local police departments, one of those officers locally, so that there's a representative for that in Allegheny County, and hopefully next year we could train one more person to do that as well. The second grant before you is in response to the tribal communities. That grant is for, I believe, somewhere around $11,000 to help to work on cultural competency training for our staff, to build a relationship with the nations so that we can work on child sex abuse cases and still be culturally competent while doing so. So that's about building a partnership.
And
Does
this,
that
we do have actually, and I think the numbers are turned around. The one that we have on the floor before us right now is the $11,209
Okay.
dollar
Oh,
grant.
maybe I have it turned around. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just the numbers, I think, but we have it right in front of us, so certainly not going by memory. I'm looking at it here. And then the next resolution is the one with the tribal expansion of Children's Advocacy Center and Service Grant, and that is a little over $23,000.
That's correct.
So,
Thank you.
I think we'll take care of this one to start with. This is the $11,209 one. This has to do with what the commissioner just explained.
Commissioner, these are all monies coming in for services that we already provide for a much needed service. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And all connected with the Child Advocacy Center. Any further questions on this resolution 33 of 21? Roll call.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Decker,
Yes.
Mr. Dibble, Mr. Fenton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havey,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rue,
yes,
Mr. Stocking,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
aye,
Mrs. Burdick,
Yes.
and Mr. Dibble. 14,
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 3421. Acceptance and appropriation of additional aid from the National Children's Alliance for the Child Advocacy Center. Tribal expansion of Children's Advocacy Center Services Grant. Approval of cooperative agreement with the National Children's Alliance. This resolution is being offered by the Human Services Committee and has committee approval.
Moved by Hopkins.
Seconded Burdick.
Motion is made by legislator Hopkins, seconded by legislator Burdick. Discussion.
This is the resolution that Commissioner Kays was referring to before with working with the tribal expansion program and being sensitive to tribal culture. Perhaps she wants to add something to that.
Commissioner, would you like to expand?
Sure. That's as Legislator Hopkins said, it's about expanding our relationships. It's about being culturally competent. It's about understanding the culture of the nation so that when we do have cases, that we are appropriate. Not that we wouldn't be, but that we are certainly paying attention to the competency, and also to train if in interviewing skills, if anybody in the child protected area of the nation would like to train as well. That grant also gives that opportunity.
Thank you. Any further questions? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Decker,
Yes.
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havey,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stockton,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
and Mrs. Burdick.
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 3521, acceptance and appropriation of additional federal aid for the state fiscal year 2020 to 2021 for the Department of Social Services, Child Abuse or Neglect Prevention and Treatment of Act, Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act of 2016 funds. This resolution is being offered by the Human Services and Ways and Means Committee and has committee approval.
Moved by Hopkins.
Second by Burdick.
Motion is made by legislator Hopkins and seconded by legislator Burdick. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Decker,
Yes.
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havey,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stockton,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes, Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
and Mrs. Burdick.
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution passed.
Resolution intro number 3621, acceptance and appropriation of caseload reduction grant funds for the Public Defender's Office. This resolution is being offered by the Public Safety Committee and has committee approval.
Legislator Healy will make the motion.
Second, Dibble.
Motion is made by legislator Healy and seconded by legislator Dibble. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Legislator Healy again. This is all money coming into the county to help offset the cost of state mandated services. So
Is that a question or comment?
that's a comment.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's,
It was a
Chairman?
test.
see if I was listening.
Mr. Chairman, this is
Yeah.
legislator Havey.
Yeah.
Is this federal money or state money?
It's a state grant.
Mr. Havey.
Taxpayers' money.
It is
State money, I believe.
Yeah.
In that case, it's our money. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mrs. Hopkins?
This is Mrs. Hopkins. I'm wondering, is this a possibility that this might help out with some of the requirements for extra staff in the office? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. This is public defender. I'm sorry. I was still thinking the DA. Sorry.
This is the public defender grant, and this does offset costs for their personnel and fringe benefits for the positions that we have added to their department over the last couple of years. It's really part of that Hurl Herring lawsuit settlement that the state distributes to us on an annual basis. It's a renewal, basically.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, Madam Treasurer.
You're welcome.
yeah, I'm sorry for the question even. I was in the wrong office.
Any further
Mr.
discussion?
Mr. Dibble,
Yes, Mr. Dibble?
take a question for maybe an answer in the future. Concerning the grant total is $300,000. What's the total cost of the program state's reimbursing us for? I right now, but some future time. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick answer is it's a lot.
I realize that, but the public doesn't know that.
Yeah, it would be good to compare that. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Decker,
Yes.
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havey,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stocking,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
aye,
Mrs. Burdick.
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 3721. Acceptance of grant funds from the probation state aid block grant for state fiscal year 2020 to 2021. This resolution is being offered by the Public Safety and Ways and Means Committees and has both committees' approval.
Legislator Healy will move that.
Second, Dibble.
Motion is made by legislator Healy and seconded by legislator Dibble. Discussion?
Chairman Dibble.
Yes, Mr. Dibble?
Just another one. Sometime maybe get some feedback about total cost to run this program and how much the state gives us sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Decker,
Yes.
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havey,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stocking,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
aye,
Mrs. Burdick.
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 3821. Approval of memorandum of understanding between the Allegheny County Department of Health and the New York State Department of Health regarding COVID-19 vaccine administration. This resolution is being offered by the Human Services Committee and has committee approval.
Moved by Hopkins.
Seconded by Burdick.
Motion is made by legislator Hopkins, seconded by legislator Burdick. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Decker,
Yes.
Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havey,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stocking,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
aye,
and Mrs. Burdick.
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 3921. Approval of agreement between the Allegheny County and Rochester Regional Health for lab services for the Reproductive and Sexual Health Program. This resolution is being offered by the Human Services Committee and has committee approval.
Moved by Hopkins.
Second by Burdick.
Motion is made by legislator Hopkins, seconded by legislator Burdick. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Curran? I'm sorry, Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Decker?
Yes.
Mr. Dibble?
Yes.
Mr. Fanton?
Yes.
Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Havey?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ricky?
Yes.
Root?
Yes.
Mr. Stocking?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Burdick?
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 4021. Approval of agreement between the County of Allegheny and Ardent Solutions as a meal provider for the intergenerational respite program for the Office for the Aging. This resolution is offered.
Moved by Hopkins. Mrs. Reilly's sound is funny.
It's breaking up. Yes.
Did you all?
Second by Burdick.
Motion is made by legislator Hopkins and seconded by legislator Burdick to move forward with resolution intro number 40-21. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Decker?
Yes.
Mr. Dibble?
Yes.
Mr. Fanton?
Yes.
Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Havey?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ricky?
Yes.
Mrs. Root?
Yes.
Mr. Stocking?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Burdick?
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 4121. Acceptance of the insurance proposal of NYMER submitted by Richardson and Stout, a division of the Evans Agency. Continued authority of board clerk and personnel committee to secure other insurance. This resolution is being offered by the personnel committee and has committee approval. It was not pre-filed and it will require a 2/3 vote to consider from the floor.
Motion on the 2/3.
Moved
Moved
by
by
Decker.
Healy.
Motion by legislator Decker, seconded by legislator Healy. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. And the resolution itself, motion is made.
Legislator Havey will move that.
Second. Motion is made by legislator Havey and seconded by legislator Harris. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Decker?
Yes.
Mr. Dibble?
Yes.
Mr. Fanton?
Yes.
Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Havey?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ricky?
Yes.
Mrs. Root?
Yes.
Mr. Stocking?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Burdick? Mrs. Burdick?
Yes.
15 ayes.
Resolution is passed.
Resolution intro number 4221. Creation of and appointment of members to the Allegheny County Police Reform and Reinvention Committee. This resolution is being offered by the Public Safety Committee and has committee approval. It was not pre-filed and it will require a 2/3 vote to consider from the floor.
Motion on the 2/3.
Fanton moves.
Havy will
Kurt?
second.
Motion made by legislator Fanton, seconded by legislator Havy to address this. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion is carried. And for the resolution itself, motion made.
Legislator Healy? Legislator Healy made the motion.
Motion made by legislator Healy, seconded by legislator Dibble. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
this
Mr.
is
Chairman.
legislator Decker.
Mr. Decker?
This resolution, police reinvention, sounds like liberal speak to me, and I'm going to be a no vote on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Legislator Graves. I have a question.
Yes.
Uh,
Graves?
Looking at the list of appointees here, there's not a judge. The magistrates in the county, I think used to have their own association, magistrates association. Are they being intentionally left out, and if so, why? I think they play an important part in the criminal justice system.
I think that there are a number of groups and individuals that would be putting, having input on this, but not serving directly on the committee. But I can let our county administrator address that if she would.
You are
Thank
correct.
you.
Yes, Chairman, you are correct. The committee covers all of the individuals that we would need to name pursuant to the executive order, but that does not mean we will be limited to just soliciting information from those people. We will make sure we talk to other stakeholders throughout the community.
And I believe that not only does that executive order address appointees, it also addresses the title of this committee. Correct.
I believe.
Well, if you're going to have, my way of thinking, if you're going to have police reform and reinvention, the judges should be a part of that, or at least, be an observer or something there. It just doesn't seem appropriate. I kind of agree with Dave Decker. It's just liberal speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Graves. Any further
Mr. Chairman,
questions? Yes.
Legislator Healy, I don't necessarily disagree with Legislator Decker's sentiment on the whole matter, but it is being required of us by the state, and we don't have much choice. And I have to say that it seems to me to be a fine group of people who've stepped up to serve in this capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, the ones that are on here by position or otherwise are done to satisfy the requirements of that executive order, but certainly the input and what the committee will seek is not limited only to these people.
Mr. Chair, this is Legislator Hopkins. I would echo Mr. Healy's thought about the makeup of the committee. I think these are good representatives for the categories that are required on the committee. There certainly could be others that will be giving input, as County Administrator has said. I also feel that there's nothing wrong with looking at the system, and there's most often room for improvement. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify that my comments were not intended to bring any disrepute on the people that you've listed that are going to be appointed to that committee. Far from it. I think you've got a good sampling of people. I just have a little concern over the magistrates being left out, but be that as it may.
Well, I think that they're being left out isn't probably accurate. I think they're not represented on this direct committee, but again, there's a number of others in groups that would be their input and position would be sought by this committee. Yeah,
I hope so.
That they would certainly have an important voice.
Mr. Chairman, this is Legislator Decker again. again, I have no problem with the people that are being selected for the committee. My main concern is that this information is going to be taken to Albany and spun, and you're going to end up with defunding of police agencies.
Any further discussion? Unless requested otherwise, we can voice vote this resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to have a roll call vote. Legislator Decker.
Very well. Roll call.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran, Mr. Curran, Mr. Decker,
No.
Mr. Dibble, Mr. Stanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havy,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
yes,
Mr. Stacken,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
no,
Mrs. Burdick,
Yes.
Mr. Curran, Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
12 ayes, 2 noes, 1 absent.
Resolution is passed. How would you like your audits?
Legislator Stockton here suggesting collectively and by totals, please.
Stanton, second that.
We'll take the suggestion as a full-blown motion by Mr. Stockton and seconded by Mr. Fanton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
General government support, 102,845.84. Education, 317,325.80. Public safety, 84,202.60. Health, 80,072.98. Bus transportation, 110,387.06. Economic assistance and opportunity, 802,136.55. And recreation, 2,231.30. Home and community services, 101,600. Employee benefits, 6,104.43. Our general fund totaled 1,667,945.68. Payroll and taxes totaled 1,072,691.30. Capital fund totaled 79,087.29. Our other funds totaled 650,533.77 for a grand total of 3,470,258.04.
Motion to pay the bills.
Root will make that motion.
Is there a second?
Ricky, second.
Motion made by legislator Root and seconded by legislator Ricky to pay the bills. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Legislator Decker.
Yes, Mr. Decker.
It's sometime during the year, this is a suggestion. I would, if we got a day that we don't have as many resolutions and so forth, possibly we could take the audit and take the larger amounts and just go down through and review them as an exercise in being frugal with our money.
In what way are we reviewing them?
take a look, anything, pick a dollar amount, anything over a certain dollar amount. Just take a look at them and review what went into it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mr. Curran, Mr. Decker,
Yes.
Mr. Dibble, Mr. Dibble, Mr. Fanton,
Yes.
Mr. Graves,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Havey,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins, Mr. Ricky,
Yes.
Mrs. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Stockton,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Burdick,
Yes.
Mr. Curran, Mr. Dibble,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hopkins.
Yes.
14 ayes, 1 absent.
Resolution is passed. Is there anything else to come before the board before we adjourn? County Administrator, did you have anything?
I do not. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Legislator Harris.
Yes, Mr. Harris.
I just wanted to let the board know that we're having or NISAC is hosting our joint intercounty meeting with the Adirondack group this Friday at 10 a.m. If anyone's interested, you can reach out to me or Jody and I'll send you a link. I think the special guest is the lady that saved that owl that got cut down with the Christmas tree in New York City.
That was Rocky. Rocky.
Was that NISAC President Brooke Harris speaking?
No, it wasn't Mr. Healy.
Oh, inter-county president.
Well, those joint meetings certainly have interesting speakers, and we appreciate the work that goes into getting them lined up, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, it's NISAC show. They do a good job.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if there's no further business to conduct, I move we adjourn.
Second by Decker.
Motion made by Legislator Graves and seconded by Legislator Decker to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.